Since I've never been to Honduras, I thought I'd learn a little bit about the history. History is divided before Europeans and after Europeans, and the pre-Columbian history of Honduras, i.e. before Columbus, is from BC to about 1000 AD and involves the indigenous inhabitants of Honduras. The Mayan or Chortí inhabited the Yucatan Peninsula, northern Guatemala, and the most northern part of Honduras. They built what is now the ruins of Copan, but it had a lot of warring even before Columbus showed up. The green splotch are the Lincans. They were on the southern Pacific side of Honduras, and they gave the Spanish a run for their money with resistance. The Amerindian group on the northern coast of Honduras was the Pech or the Playa, which are probably the Indians that Columbus discovered when he landed on Guanaja. The European era began in 1502 when Columbus lands in the Bay Islands. This was the fourth and final voyage of Columbus, and he was about my age 51, and he was really looking for the westward passage to find the spices of India and China. He was the first European to visit Central America, and on his way back at where the number 10 is, he was shipwrecked in Jamaica. He still believed he was in Asia and finally got some transportation back to Spain, where he died 4 years later. In the first half of the 1500s, Spain conquers after many bitter, bloody struggles. The Mayans carried wooden swords with embedded obsidian blades, but this was no match for the lances, the horses, and the hardened steel broadswords of the Spaniards. Those who weren't killed in battle died from the diseases that the Europeans carried, for which they had no resistance. The most famous indigenous person in Honduras is probably Lempira. This was a Lincoln chief who organized the native resistance against the Spanish conquistadors, especially Francisco de la Montejo. He died in 1537. He was killed in battle against the conquistadors, and for this he was honored by the Honduran people by having his likeness placed on their currency. Spain was ruthless but highly efficient, and they conquered the entire Pacific coast of both North and South America and the Caribbean coast from Florida all around North America to the very northern parts of South America. This became known as the Spanish Main. In Honduras, the first asset the Spaniards took advantage of was the gold and silver mines that the natives had found. Initially, the indigenous population served as the labor for the grueling work of the mines. However, hard work and eventually the European diseases killed so many of their workforce that the Spanish had to import African slaves to do the work. The gold and silver and other riches of the New World helped fund the wars back home, but there was a darker side. The advancing incomes of the home front made inflation, which caused an economic crisis back home. Economic turmoil further strengthened the colonials' interest in the New World. The French, of course, took the northern part of North America, Canada, and followed the rivers down toward Louisiana and New Orleans. The British had the eastern coast pretty much wrapped up, and Spain had the southern United States down into the northern part of South America. The resulting acquisitions were truly empires on which the sun never set. Spain had North and South America on the Pacific side and most of North America on the Caribbean side. Portuguese, who shared the Iberian Peninsula back home with Spain, also shared the east coast of South America with Spain. From 1500 to 1700, this was truly the Spanish Golden Age. Over time, however, the British Empire took over, and from 1700s to 1900s, the British Empire ruled the sea, and they established vast holdings throughout northeast North America, major parts of Africa, especially down the Nile, India, and throughout the South Pacific, including Australia. So the year 1700 was fairly pivotal in the Caribbean as a transition between the empires. The Lesser Antilles, seen in the blue here, were primarily under control of the French. The Greater Antilles make up the bulk of the island landmass inside the Caribbean and include Cuba, the island of Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. They were under the control of a weakening Spanish Empire. The left half of the island of Hispaniola is blue, belonging to France because Spain lost it in the war against Napoleon. And that's the reason Haitians speak French. You may notice 3 tiny pink islands off the northern coast of South America, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. Not much territory to fight over, but an excellent spot to go diving. The territory marked in yellow belongs to England. By the early 1600s, English Puritans had settled in Bermuda and later were forced out into the Bahamas. By 1655, they'd captured Jamaica from the Spanish and also had the Cayman Islands. By 1700, England already had a presence in Central America. In 1630, they had first contact with the Amerindians of the Mosquito Coast, or the Payan Indians, where Nicaragua now is. Later on, there was a slave ship that became shipwrecked in 1660, and the Indians and the slaves mixed to become the Zombo Mosquito, who traditionally favored supporting the English goals because they fought their joint enemy, Spain. Up along the coast of what is now Belize, English privateers, known as the Baymen of Belize, established a colony that was small but functional. And that helps to explain why folks in Belize and the Bay Islands tend to speak English. That'll wrap up the lesson for this time.